The Russian LGBTIQA+ community has been dealing with a growing wave of legal and social discrimination in the past decade. As Moscow's relations with the West are worsening, Russian leaders are increasingly targeting LGBTIQA+ citizens, often conflating the community's struggles for more rights with Western-backed propaganda. There have been various laws and measures introduced against LGBTIQA+ Russians, promoted as protection of traditional values and national culture. Both Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Russian Orthodox Church have been at the forefront of these developments. In 2014, Russia organized the Winter Olympics in Sochi. A few months earlier, in 2013, Russian representatives passed laws that prohibited demonstrations of same-sex relations and restricted the adoption of Russian children in countries where same-sex marriage is allowed. Several analysts referred to these laws as state-sponsored homophobia. These political developments caused an international response, with many foreign athletes who are part of the LGBTIQA+ community expressing their concerns and solidarity with those directly affected. After the Sochi Olympics, the International Olympic Committee introduced an anti-discrimination clause to the official agreement with hosting countries. In the following years, the federal Russian government adopted several more measures targeting LGBTIQA+ people. For example, Russian legislators voted on an amendment to the constitution that explicitly bans same-sex marriage in 2020. In 2021, various LGBT organizations were added to the notorious foreign agents list, which has hindered activism in Russia for years. In 2022, the Russian Duma further expanded the 2013 anti-propaganda law, restricting any mention of issues related to LGBTIQA+. The ban extends to arts, science, and education, meaning that any information suspected of being related to the subject of LGBTIQA+ people is heavily censored. More recently, a proposed law is specifically targeting the healthcare field, prohibiting gender-affirming services for trans people and legalizing operations on intersex minors without their consent. Beyond these, LGBTIQA+ citizens have little protection against social discrimination and hate crimes, with members of the community being routinely harassed, abused, or even murdered. According to victims, all this happens with the tolerance of the authorities, if not with direct participation. As expected, none of these cases was ever investigated. Nevertheless, the Russian federal government is not the biggest instigator of anti-LGBT persecution. Since 2017, the local authorities in Chechnya have organized and executed large-scale purges against suspected members of the LGBTIQA+ community. Among others, they have been unlawfully detained, tortured, abused, and disappeared. Chechnyan leaders have also encouraged so-called honor killings of suspects by their families. There have been at least 2 mass anti-LGBT purges in Chechnya, one in 2017 and one in 2019. In 2018, 16 member states of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe triggered the Moscow Mechanism, which pertains to issues related to human security. The special rapporteur concluded that there was clear evidence of the successive purges against LGBTI persons. However, not much has changed in Chechnya. Instead, the rest of the Russian Federation seems to move towards the former's example. Russia's invasion of Ukraine seems to have further worsened the status of LGBTIQA+ citizens. Furthermore, the initial reasoning behind invading Ukraine and the anti-LGBT agenda stem from the same rationale, in other words protecting the Russian world and its values from the West's expansion. Beyond that, President Putin himself gladly adopts the anti-woke label, an approach that is increasingly popular in the new right and conservative movements in Western countries. As some analysts have suggested, right-wing politicians have connected the war in Ukraine to the culture wars of contemporary liberal societies.